I watched all episodes of Demon Slayer, and here are 102 facts you didn't know. Beginning with this weird detail about Tanjiro's hands. At the beginning of the show, Tanjiro was so weak my grandma could have beaten him in a fight. And this didn't change until he went through his Demon Slayer training. Here are his hands before training, and here they are after his training. A tiny detail that nobody noticed. And it's not that surprising that Tanjiro went so hard on his training, cause, well, he's got nothing else to do. His family's dead. But his dead family actually made a secret cameo. See, during the Mugen Train movie, a random kid enters Tanjiro's subconscious using his dark demon arts. Once inside, the kid meets these 6 flames that guide him around. Most people thought the flames were a reference to Tanjiro's sun-breathing abilities. No. The flames represent Tanjiro's family, his mother, 4 younger siblings, and Nezuko. And speaking of Nezuko, did you know she's actually won a world record? Think about it. She's a demon who joined the Demon Slayer Corps. Here's a recreation of how this happened. Yo, is it cool if my sister joins the Corps? Of course! She's a demon. But, Nezuko isn't the only one setting records, because Demon Slayer has set tons of them too, with fight scenes like this. And this.
Get it out! Get off me, you brats!
I'm not surprised that Demon Slayer has taken home so many awards. And because of that quality, you'd think the animation costs a fortune. But I did the math, and their budget comes down to around $80,000 per episode. And that's not actually a ton of money. Dragon Ball's budget is double, and their episodes still look bad. But Demon Slayer was definitely saving up money, because in 2020, they spent $16 million on their first movie. And this movie made so much money, it broke records. The previous record was $395 million earned by Spirited Away, a 2001 movie. But Demon Slayer walked right in and obliterated them, because they smashed the record, earning over $500 million. And it doesn't stop there, because they set a record in a whole nother category. In 2020, Demon Slayer became the top-selling manga, beating One Piece and Jujutsu Kaisen with over 150 million copies in a single year. That's the equivalent to 50 billion yen, or around $385 million. But even those millions couldn't stop them from making the worst mistake in anime history. See, going back to 2016 when Demon Slayer was first blowing up, there was a huge mystery surrounding Inosuke's face reveal. Because up till that point, nobody knew what he looked like, and you can bet there was a ton of hype behind it. But by accident, the face reveal got ruined. See, Demon Slayer released a mini-comic at the end of one of their volumes, and it was just supposed to be a goofy story, but the editor accidentally showed Inosuke's face months before it would be revealed in the manga. People got so angry that Demon Slayer's author was forced to release an official apology about the whole situation. I made a mistake by showing Inosuke's face in a comic strip. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize. I'm under strict time constraints, and so I make mistakes. I'll be working as hard as I can, so I hope you'll stick with me. Now, you can't fix Inosuke's ruined face reveal, but luckily he's got tons of other secrets. Like, did you know Inosuke shares a voice actor with the main character from Sword Art Online? And actually make that 2 voice actors, since they have the same voice in both Japanese and English. Which is crazy since the characters are so different. In fact, their only similarity is that they both dual-wield swords. But this thing makes their dual wielding look like a kid's toy because it wields 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different swords. And the secret behind it is kinda crazy. This thing's name is Yoriichi Type 0, and it's made to copy the fighting style of the legendary Demon Slayer. The thing is, Yoriichi was such a beast that 2 arms wouldn't be enough to copy his moves, even for a machine. So they added 4 more arms, and the battle doll still isn't even half as strong as Yoriichi. Yeah, Yoriichi's a beast, but so is the creator of Demon Slayer. And despite having invented the most popular manga in the world, the only thing we know about them is their name, Gotoge. But this didn't stop them from making history, because they made the list of the Time 100's most influential people. Gotoge is the only anonymous person and the only mangaka to ever make this list. Now, if there was a list for the scariest characters in Demon Slayer, Inosuke would probably insist on being at the top. And I'm saying this because I discovered one of his deepest, darkest secrets. See, while I was going through a chapter released back in 2019, I realized this is what what Inosuke looks like, but he thinks he looks like this? Check this dude out. No wonder he's always yelling at people. But learning all these secrets made me start asking questions. Demons are always chomping down on humans, so what if the opposite happened? Well, I found the answer in the manga, and it turns out there's only one person in the show that's capable of having a demon snack. Genya. The manga explains that he's the only person with a strong enough jaw and immune system to eat a demon. So if another person tried to eat a demon, they would break their jaw. And even if they could somehow chomp it up, it would end up destroying their internal organs. I think I'll pass on that one. But there's another even smaller, hidden, teeny detail that I noticed in the manga. See, after Rengoku's death, the hilt of his sword is given to Tanjiro, and you can see it on Tanjiro's sword in chapter 129. But what's very odd is that if you compare that hilt to Rengoku's way back when he was still alive, you'll notice that Tanjiro has the hilt on backwards. The flames on his sword face away from the opponent, while the flames on Rengoku's face towards the opponent. Now, Demon Slayer's author hasn't revealed why, but my theory is that it symbolizes Tanjiro's different fighting style. He doesn't use flame breathing, he uses sun breathing. But there's one mystery that I have solved. Demon Slayer's blue spider lily. See, the lily has the power to turn humans into demons, but nobody's been able to find it. After doing some research, I found out that it's actually based on a real-life plant. The plant is actually a red spider lily, which represents death in Japanese culture. But in Demon Slayer, the blue spider lilies were what saved Muzan from dying. Talk about a plot twist. Have you ever wondered how the ranks in the Demon Slayer Corps work? Most people probably forget, but there are 11 ranks, the lowest being Mizunoto and the highest being Hashira. If you want to move up through the ranks, you have to complete missions and kill demons. And to become a Hashira, you either have to kill 50 demons or 1 demon moon. Now, all these slayers are using concentration breathing, but did you know it was actually inspired by a real-life medical technique called box breathing? Here's how it works. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold that breath for another 4 seconds, breathe out over 4 seconds, and then hold your empty lungs for at least 4 seconds. This technique gets your lungs tons of oxygen, helping you focus and relieve stress. It's so effective that even the military uses it. This is Funko Pop, and this is a Demon Slayer Funko Pop. And if you collect every single Demon Slayer figure, you would notice that some of them are special. The Funko Pops for Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu all come with a special face on the inner tab of the box, which most people never find because they leave the figure in the box. Now, one of the most hidden secrets took place before the manga was even created. See, back in 2013, Gotege hadn't even come up with Demon Slayer and was instead working on another manga called Kagari Gari. Gotege didn't know it, but that manga was just a rough draft of Demon Slayer. See, the original manga had 2 critical elements. The first was Kagari Gari's main character. He kinda looks like Tanjiro, but that's where the similarities ended. This guy was super edgy, and a lot of fans hated that. So Gotege learned from this mistake and realized a wholesome character would be much more popular. The second element was even more important, a rough draft of Muzan, the guy who started Tanjiro's journey in the first place. Just 2 pages in, you can see his early design. He's dressed the exact same way and was even named Muzan back then. It's crazy that 3 years before Demon Slayer was written, Gotege had already created the main antagonist. Let's fast forward to 2019, because when Demon Slayer was transitioning into an anime, the production team secretly made a controversial change. And they did this because there was one thing about the manga that they didn't like: the narration. See, these extra panels share important information from a narrator's POV, but the production team didn't want to include a narrator since it would feel out of place in the anime. So they removed the extra panels, and in the process, lots of important details. The best example of this lost information is the demons meeting in season 1. In the anime, we learn that Muzan can read the minds of his demons, but 3 other pieces of information were deleted and only shown in the manga. First, everything that the demons see or hear is sent back to Muzan. That's why he can read the demon's thoughts. Second, Muzan can also share his memories with demons. Third, Muzan can track the locations of his demons, but 3 of them have been able to break this curse: Tamayo, Yushido, and Nezuko. Sadly, Rengoku hasn't been able to break his curse that affects his entire bloodline. This ridiculous hair that's been passed down through the generations. Rengoku claims that it's because his ancestors ate a lot of shrimp tempura, but I'm not too sure about that one, because the moms in the Rengoku family do some crazy things. Whenever a woman in the family is pregnant, they spend 2 hours staring directly at a flaming torch every week. This would explain why everyone in Rengoku's family is so good at flame breathing. Muichiro hasn't been as lucky with his family. While Rengoku's ancestors just ate a ton of shrimp, Muichiro's ancestor was Kokushibo, the first demon moon. Definitely not not something he's very proud of. But Muichiro isn't the only Hashira with a connection to one of the demon moons, because Shinobu's relationship with a certain demon is personal. And that's because this guy killed her older sister. Literally, her whole reason for being a demon slayer is to kill Doma. She's a lot like Gyomei in that way, because Gyomei got done dirty by one of the demon moons. See, he used to run an orphanage until one of the kids invited a demon over. That kid ended up becoming the demon moon Kaigaku. Man, Gyomei's whole life got turned upside down by one dumb kid. Did you know that Demon Slayer lied to you about Tanjiro? When Tanjiro's blade first turned black, Sakonji and Haganezuka were shocked and a little scared, because according to ancient lore, demon slayers with black blades died early and struggled with learning breathing styles. Tanjiro was freaked out by this, but the truth is that demon slayers with black blades are actually the most talented swordsmen in the world. It only seems like they lack skill because they have trouble learning a normal breathing style, and the reason they have trouble with it is because they're supposed to learn the most powerful breathing style called sun breathing. And next, let's talk about why Tanjiro's demon slayer mark is actually going to kill him. See, everybody believes that once you unlock a demon slayer mark, you become a lot more powerful, but you're also going to die before the age of 25. This is commonly called the curse of the demon slayer mark, but after tons of research, I realized that everybody was wrong. It's not really a curse. See, the marks allow demon slayers to use more power, but at the expense of their own health. So if a demon slayer uses the mark too many times, they'll cause their body to quickly deteriorate and pass away early. Dang, that's just crazy. But not as crazy as our next point, cause did you know that Tanjiro's sword secretly appeared in the Jujutsu Kaisen manga? In one of the latest chapters of JJK, a bad guy is running around the city looking for a katana. He breaks into a child's room and sees a box of toys, and inside that box is a toy version of Tanjiro's katana. The dope part is that when you press a button on the sword, Tanjiro's voice says, "First form, water surface splash." That's so cool. But listen, Tanjiro isn't just good at fighting because he's the main character. He's actually a secret fighting prodigy. See, Tanjiro became a better swordsman than Sabito in just 6 months. And Sabito was definitely not a weak demon slayer. He trained side by side with the water Hashira Gyu and actually saved Gyu's life a couple times. But Tanjiro is even more talented than that because he's the only demon slayer alive that can use 2 different breathing styles, water and sun breathing. So where do Tanjiro's secret fighting skills come from? Well, if you trace his lineage, you'll find that one of Tanjiro's ancestors was given the secret of sun breathing by Yorichi, the original sun breather. And that's pretty cool, but I was even more excited after discovering Tanjiro's top secret fighting moves. See, there's a Demon Slayer video game that came out in 2021, and in it, Tanjiro has 3 unique skill moves that have never been shown in the anime. The first 2 moves look pretty boring, but the third one is insane. It's called Phoenix Splash and looks like this. But something that's even more secret than those killer moves is the meaning of Tanjiro's name. If you look at his name in Japanese kanji, the Tan means charcoal, the Ji means heel, and the Ro translates to sun. The charcoal in his name just stands for what Tanjiro's job was before he became a demon slayer. He used to turn wood into charcoal and then sell it to local villages. But what does heel or Ji in his name stand for? It's never been confirmed, but I think it symbolizes the journey he's on to try and heal his sister. He is trying to turn her back into a human after all. And listen, it sucks that Nezuko is a demon, but one thing she doesn't have to worry about is people saying her name right, because Inosuke over here has literally never correctly said Tanjiro's name. So far in the anime, Inosuke is called Tanjiro, Gonpachiro Kamaboko, Gengaro Shakuriki, and 8 other pronunciations of his name. You also can't forget the time Tanjiro was a raccoon named Tanjiro in a dream that Inosuke had. Man, Inosuke really sucks at names. And I'm surprised that Tanjiro isn't more annoyed, because I'd be insulted if one of my best friends forgot my name. It's not even half as bad as what Gyu does to Tanjiro on the daily. See, Tanjiro has to travel a lot to slay demons, and because the iPhone 14 Mini Pro Max isn't out yet, he has to settle for a much slower way of communicating. He sent letters to his Water Hashira master, Hyodro's little brother, Tengen, but Gyu is the only person who's never responded to any letters. I get that Gyu's a man of few words, but he should at least have the courtesy to respond to a letter, right? But maybe Gyu never responds to the letters because he hates how stinky Tanjiro is. See, the official fanbook of Demon Slayer revealed that Tanjiro barely ever takes off his earrings. They've been handed down from father to son all the way from the original Demon Slayer, Yorichi. Because of this, Tanjiro has the oldest, nastiest earrings in the world and only takes them off when they start itching too much. Gross. But we gotta talk about sad backstories because there's a running joke that every single demon in Demon Slayer has one. And Tanjiro always starts crying when the defeated demon shares their story. But why is he so empathetic? It's not just an annoying character flaw. The reason he cares so much about demons is because Nezuko is one. He understands that demons aren't necessarily horrible people, and Nezuko is living proof of that. Tanjiro's empathy might be annoying to you and me, but there's one good thing that comes out of it. Pretty much every eligible young lady in the show has fallen in love with him. And he's actually kind of a playboy because while Tanjiro ends up marrying Kanao, a couple other girls were interested in him too. Aoi loved Tanjiro, but when she noticed that Kanao was head over heels, she changed things up and went after Inosuke instead. I wonder what Inosuke would say if he realized he got Tanjiro's dirty leftovers. And to be honest, he'd probably get extremely angry. But Inosuke's anger would only be 1% of the anger that Tanjiro felt when he first met Muzan. See, this scene is special because it's the first time we get to see Tanjiro's full anger. You gotta remember that his entire family was killed by the Demon King, and Nezuko was turned into a demon by him. Even worse, it's technically Muzan's fault every time that a demon kills one of Tanjiro's friends. And this is a good reminder that Tanjiro wants to turn his sister back into a human, but he also wants to avenge his family and friends. Let's switch things up. Did you know that a ton of Japanese parents hate Tanjiro's guts? I'm betting you didn't, but Tanjiro is so popular with Japanese kids that parents are starting to get scared. You see, the results of a 2020 study showed that Japanese kids admire Tanjiro the most, even more than their parents. If my kids said they looked up to an anime character more than me, I'd take away their iPad until they got married, because that's just wild. But what's even more wild is Tanjiro's sense of smell. Before you say,
"Oh, Imoto, I already know all about his nose."
I guarantee you only know 1% of the insane things his nose can do. First, Tanjiro's sense of smell is so good that he was able to recognize Muzan's scent 2 years after his family was killed. But it gets even crazier because Tanjiro's sense of smell is so great, he can sense people's true intentions. That's right, he can smell your emotions. In fact, he was able to sense Shinobu's hatred of demons even when she was trying to hide it. But the most insane thing that his nose can smell is the future. I'm not going to spoil it, but in the Swordsmith arc, Tanjiro trains so hard that he brings his nose to a whole new level. Tanjiro's nose is also his biggest weakness because if he gets a stuffy nose, he wouldn't be able to smell your intentions or the future. But Tanjiro has another weakness, and it's hilarious. He can't keep a straight face while lying. I mean, look at his face. If he tried to lie to me, I would know in an instant. And listen, that's sad and all, but it's nothing compared to how angry Tanjiro made this guy feel. See, Haganazuka has no life, no wife, no girlfriend. The only thing he loves in the world is the swords he makes for demon slayers. So when Tanjiro broke not 1, not 2, but 3 of his swords, Haganazuka was ready to end Tanjiro's life. But I think everything worked out because the 4th sword that Tanjiro gets is like 9,000 times more powerful than his previous 2 swords combined. See, it's made by combining the hilt from Rengoku's old sword and the blade from his ancestor Yorichi's sword. I bet Haganazuka loved working on that sword because those 2 pieces fused to make one of the strongest swords out there. And listen, Tanjiro gets into some crazy fights with that sword, but let's remember that he wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for this character. Yeah, that's right, you don't remember this dude, even though he's the whole reason Tanjiro became a demon slayer. See, way back in the very first episode, Tanjiro traveled down to the village to sell charcoal to the villagers. It took him a while to sell everything he had, so by the time he was done, it was already getting dark out. Now, Tanjiro wanted to go back up the mountain to join his family, but this man, Mr. Saburo, warned him not to. Saburo's family had been killed by demons during the night, so he invited Tanjiro to sleep over. Tanjiro nearly declined, but after a bit of convincing, he accepted Saburo's offer. The crazy part here is that if Mr. Saburo hadn't convinced Tanjiro to stay in the village overnight, Tanjiro would have joined his family just in time for Muzan's dinner. Then, the only surviving person would have been Nezuko, but she would have died shortly after because Gyu would have found her and ended her. And that fight between Gyu and Nezuko would probably be so graphic that it would need to be censored. But I get the feeling that Demon Slayer's author hates the demons because she treats them so badly. See, Demon Slayer has 23 manga volumes, which all show a different character on their covers. Out of 23, only 2 feature a villain, and both times it's Muzan. I get that he's the main antagonist, but dang, I feel bad for the Demon Moons. Not getting featured on the front page kinda blows. So here is every demon moon, and I'm gonna be explaining each of their backstories, starting with the demon who killed her husband after he sold her dress. This is the demon moon Nakime, and this instrument caused her to end her own husband. See, Nakime lived a poor life because her husband always gambled away their wealth. One day, the husband took his addiction too far and ended up gambling away the dress that Nakime performed in. He begged her for forgiveness, but this time he had gone too far. In a fit of rage, Nakime grabbed a hammer and ended her husband. Before she could even hide the body, her manager knocked at the door and said, "Nakime, it's time to perform." She grabbed her instrument and took to the stage, nervous because she was poorly dressed. But to her surprise, the crowd loved her music. They ended up chanting for an encore, and from that moment on, Nakime began murdering someone before each of her performances, believing that this gave her good luck. That is until one performance where she made a deadly mistake, picking Muzan to be her next victim. She waited till he was alone and hit him with a hammer, but he turned around completely unhurt. Muzan was so impressed by her hammer skills that he decided to turn her into a demon. Now, Nakime might have killed her husband, but the next Kizuki, Hantengu, took things even further by marrying and ending 7 different women. It all started when he was a child, because Hantengu was a pathological liar who always found a way to blame others for his mistakes. And things got worse as he grew up, because he went from lying to murdering people. See, Hantengu would marry someone, have kids with them, then he'd convince himself that he was being mistreated and kill his entire family. He managed to do this 7 times before he was finally captured and sentenced to death by decapitation. It seemed like he was finally getting the punishment he deserved, until Muzan arrived and turned him into the demon we know today. Next we have Akaza, the dude who turned Rengoku into a donut. But he wasn't always like this. See, Akaza was a criminal who roamed the streets, beating up anyone who looked at him. Talk about insecure. And when he challenged the dojo master Keizo to a fight, Akaza expected an easy win, but instead, he got his butt whooped. The master invited Akaza to his dojo, and he quickly became a talented martial artist. While there, Akaza fell in love with his master's sickly daughter, taking care of her when he wasn't training. Things went well, and for the first time in his life, Akaza felt at home, eventually marrying the daughter. But things wouldn't stay happy for long. While Akaza was out of town, a jealous man at another dojo decided to get revenge. See, he had been in love with Akaza's wife, and when she got married, he was so angry, he poisoned her water well. Both the dojo master and the daughter died, and when Akaza returned, he went insane, going on a mad rampage and killing the jealous man's entire dojo with his bare hands. It was such a massacre that it even caught the attention of Muzan. He investigated the crime scene, expecting one of his demons to be the culprit, but was shocked to see a human. Muzan turned him into a demon, and Akaza quickly became the Upper Moon Rank 3. Now, Akaza almost changed his ways, unlike Doma, who did horrible things even as a kid. See, Doma was born with rainbow-colored eyes, causing his village to worship him and make him the leader of the Paradise Faith cult, where he shared the knowledge of the gods. But there was just one problem. Doma was faking it all. The gods weren't actually talking to him, and he didn't even believe in them. Despite this, Doma pretended to hear from the gods, but eventually everything came crashing down. His mom had been slowly going insane, and one day, she snapped, killing her husband and then herself. Any normal kid would have been traumatized, but not Doma. In fact, his only reaction was to be annoyed, because his mom had made a bloody mess. Things only got worse, because after meeting Muzan, Doma asked to be turned into a demon, realizing that with his new powers, he could secretly eat his cult members and become extremely strong. Doma's cult and power continued to grow until a woman joined his cult and turned everything upside down. See, Kotoha had an evil husband, and with nowhere to go, she took her newborn son Inosuke and joined the cult. Things went well at first, but Kotoha began noticing that cult members were disappearing, and after spying on Doma, she discovered that he was eating the Paradise Faith members. When Doma caught her spying, Kotoha knew she was in danger. She grabbed her son and made a mad dash for her life, but unfortunately, she ran right into a dead end at the edge of a cliff. In her last moments, Kotoha accepted her fate, but refused to let her son die. With a leap of faith, she threw Inosuke off the cliff, praying that he would somehow end up alright. As we know, Inosuke was rescued and raised by boars, but Kotoha was eaten down to the bone. Ugh. While Doma had no excuse to be evil, Gyoko definitely did, cause his childhood was so traumatic he went insane. Gyoko was born in a fishing village to a happy family, but when his parents washed ashore after disappearing on a fishing expedition, his life quickly deteriorated. The sight of his parents' bodies broke something in Gyoko, causing him to fall in love with dead things, and he began a gross hobby of playing with dead fish. The villagers thought he was insane, so they kept their distance from him, but the village kids bullied him every chance they got. One day, the bullying went too far, and Gyoko finally snapped, murdering his bully and then stuffing the body into a giant fishing pot. Gyoko thought he was free of the bullying, but when the parents discovered their dead son, they gathered the entire village and stabbed Gyoko with a bunch of fishing spears. Gyoko lay on the sand for over 12 hours, waiting for the end to come, but instead, Muzan found him and turned him into a demon. After recovering, Gyoko only remembered two things. Muzan had saved him, and humans were evil. As a demon, Gyoko kept his strange obsession with fish and stuffed his victims into fish pots for later. But even as an evil fish demon, he doesn't look half as bad as Gyutaro, the ugliest demon of them all. You see, Gyutaro was born in the poorest part of the entertainment district, and he was so ugly that his mom hated him, beating him nearly every day. His life was even worse outside of home, because the entire town hated him too. With nobody taking care of him, he was forced to eat insects and mice just to survive. Gyutaro's life just sucked, but everything changed when his mother gave birth to Ume. With a little sister, Gyutaro felt a responsibility to be a protector, even protecting her from their abusive mother. One day, Gyutaro's mother took things too far and tried to shave all of Ume's hair off. Gyutaro jumped in, defended Ume, and then took his sister and left, leaving his mother alone forever. From this point on, Gyutaro raised Ume himself. He was very fond of his sister's looks, and she eventually became an entertainer. Here, Gyutaro found a calling as his sister's debt collector, leading the siblings to finally becoming successful. This happiness wouldn't last for long, because in just one day, the two lost everything. See, one of Ume's customers was a samurai. He was a little too pushy, so Ume decided to poke out the dude's eye in self-defense. The samurai was outraged and burned Ume alive, and when Gyutaro found his sister's burning body, he was devastated, crying and pleading for someone to save her. However, his prayers were only met with a swift cut to the back. Gyutaro turned around to see both the evil samurai and Ume's manager. Apparently, the manager had wanted to kill the siblings for a long time, and Ume's fight with the samurai finally gave the manager a good excuse. But things didn't go out as planned. Gyutaro grabbed his scythe, killing both the samurai and the manager. He then picked up the half-dead Ume and tried to find someone who would help her, but nobody did anything. Instead, a harsh snowstorm formed. Not even the weather was on Gyutaro's side. It was at this point that the two encountered Doma, the current Upper Moon 6. He offered them the choice to become a demon, which Gyutaro immediately accepted. Man, the demon moons all had crappy lives, but Kaigaku was one of the worst, cause he was a demon slayer who chose to become a demon. As a human, Kaigaku was an orphan, forced to live off of scraps just to survive. Everything changed for him when one day he was taken in by Kuwajima, the former Thunder Hashira. Kaigaku was trained in the way of thunder breathing, alongside best boy Zenitsu. But Kaigaku was kind of a bully, disrespecting anyone weaker than him. As he trained, Kaigaku became even meaner because he couldn't master the first form of thunder breathing, no matter how hard he tried. On the other hand, Zenitsu could only use the first form of thunder breathing. This led to an odd dynamic between them, with Kaigaku hating Zenitsu since he believed him to be a weak coward. So when the ex-Thunder Hashira announced that Kaigaku and Zenitsu would inherit thunder breathing, Kaigaku snapped. He left the dojo in a rage, which would end up as his biggest mistake. Shortly after leaving the dojo, Kaigaku came face to face with Kokushibo, the strongest demon moon, who offered him a choice between being killed or becoming a demon. Kaigaku's weak willpower gave way, and he agreed to become a demon, replacing Gyutaro and Daki as the Upper Moon rank 6. Kinda crazy that he became a demon because he was a coward. But Kokushibo's similar, cause his jealousy turned him into a demon. See, thousands of years ago, Kokushibo was just a kid training to become a master samurai. He was very talented, unlike his brother Yoriichi, who was an outcast for having a weird marking on his face. But one day, while Koku was training against his master, Yoriichi asked if he could try, and after picking up the sword, he destroyed the sword master in one go. Everyone watching was shocked, and from that point on, Yoriichi was treated like a celebrity. celebrity, while Kokushibo was ignored. As an outcast, Koku grew to resent his brother, wishing that Yoriichi would just die. And in a way, his wish was granted, because Yoriichi disappeared for the next 10 years. Koku went on with his life and became a master samurai, but one night, his happy life was interrupted. See, while out on patrol, Koku was attacked by demons. It seemed like he was about to die, but Yoriichi came out of nowhere and saved him. Despite having saved his life, this was probably the worst day of Koku's life. His jealousy came back even stronger, leading Kokushibo to abandon his samurai path to become a demon slayer. All he wanted was to surpass his brother, a goal that seemed impossible. Koku trained hard and became one of the strongest demon slayers of his time. He unlocked the demon slayer mark and even became a Hashira. But despite all this, he still wasn't as strong as Yoriichi and couldn't learn sun breathing, instead having to settle for moon breathing, a slightly weaker breathing style. Koku raged at his weakness, but one day, he came face to face with the solution to all his problems. He met Muzan, the Demon King, and finally saw a chance to surpass his brother by turning into a demon. Over the next 60 years, Demon Kokushibo grew stronger, killing demon slayer after demon slayer. He assumed his brother was long dead, but Yoriichi surprised him one last time by appearing in front of Kokushibo as an old man, still alive despite having the slayer mark. Koku was furious and grabbed his sword, but before he could make a move, Yoriichi had sliced open his throat. Koku knew it was all over and braced himself for the killing blow, but when he opened his eyes, Yoriichi had died right where he was standing. Enraged by a feeling of inferiority, Koku slashed his brother's body in half and left, determined to become even stronger. Now, demon moons are just freaky, but I bet the Hashira have secrets even you don't know.
Did you know that Tengen Uzui's original design was supposed to look like this? He was way less muscular, had bandages covering his face, and also had sleeves covering his arms to apparently protect him from the sun. Tengen's design went from this to this, and I gotta say, I like the current design way better. And we can't talk about Tengen without bringing up his disgusting origin story. You've probably noticed that Tengen has not one, not two, but 3 wives, and that's because of the way his family raised him. Tengen was raised to be a ninja, or a shinobi in Japanese. When he turned 15, his family chose 3 wives for him based on how compatible they were with his personality. And that's not even the worst part. Tengen had 9 siblings and loved them all very much. But his dad was extremely strict and overtrained them all so much that 3 of Tengen's siblings died as kids. And even worse, Tengen's dad made all his kids fight to the death so that only the strongest child would survive. After fighting and killing 2 of his siblings, Tengen was disgusted with his father and left the family forever. But despite all this, Tengen learned a skill from his family that only one other person in the entire Demon Slayer anime has. This was his ability to use 2 swords. Besides Tengen and Inosuke, none of the Demon Slayers use 2 swords to fight. But let's move on to the next Hashira. Sanemi has a secret advantage when he's fighting demons that none of the other Hashira have. And it's all because he's a Marichi. In case you didn't know, Marichis are humans who have extremely rare blood, which makes their blood 10 times more flavorsome to demons. But because Sanemi is also Hashira, his blood is even rarer than a regular Marichi. And his mouth-wateringly blood is so rare that demons will often become dizzy just by smelling it. This has allowed him to defeat extremely strong demons in the past because they're basically intoxicated. And I don't know if Sanemi is proud of how rare his blood is, but I definitely know that he is very proud of his muscles. It's because he's proud of them that he keeps his uniform open in the front so that everybody can see his crazy six-pack. And later on, we reveal the reason that Mitsuri keeps her uniform open while Shinubo keeps it closed. But did you know that Muzan and Sanemi have 2 weird things in common? Both of them weigh the exact same and are the same height at 5'10". And just like Muzan, many people are afraid of Sanemi. In fact, Sanemi is the most feared member of the Hashira, which makes sense because he's scary looking. But let's talk about the strongest Hashira for a second. Did you know that Gyome once beat Inosuke head first into the ground? Inosuke being, well, Inosuke challenged Gyome to a fight, and things didn't end very well for him. Unfortunately, this scene hasn't been animated yet, but I'm excited to see it in Season 3. And I wonder if we're going to see Gyome's favorite animal in Season 3. You see, several of the Hashira have favorite animals. For Obanai, I'm betting you can guess that it's snakes. For Mitsuri and Gyome, it's cats. But what does the strongest Hashira do when he's not out fighting demons? Well, Gyome has plenty of hobbies, but his favorite hobby is playing the flute. He first started playing it when he was a kid and fell in love with it. He played it for so long once that his grandma got annoyed and smacked him in the head with a broom. But let's talk about why Shinobu doesn't have an opening in her uniform while Mitsuri does. You see, Shinobu originally was supposed to have the same style uniform as Mitsuri, but when she saw how immodest the opening in the chest area was, she burned it right in front of the man who gave it to her. You go, girl! Before we get into why Mitsuri still has hers, let's talk about Shinobu and Mitsuri's weird relationship. While Shinobu and Mitsuri have different uniforms, they're actually really great friends. And one of the main reasons for this is probably because they're the only two female Hashira. Shinobu is able to talk to Mitsuri about her life, and Mitsuri teaches Shinobu how to cook. And if you remember from earlier, Mitsuri's favorite animals are cats, but Shinobu absolutely hates them. You see, she can't stand anything furry. And the reason for this isn't very clear, but that's why Shinobu's favorite animal is a goldfish. She has one as a pet, and its name is Fugu. And if you Google what the word Fugu means, you'll actually discover an Easter egg. But before I share this Easter egg, we need to talk about something so it makes sense. Shinobu is extremely weak. She's actually the weakest Hashira, which is why she uses poison to kill demons rather than brute strength. But back to the word Fugu. You'll find that is the name of a poisonous pufferfish. This fits extremely well with Shinobu because she uses poison to kill demons. And speaking of poison, at one point in the series, the amount of poison in Shinobu's body was 700 times the amount necessary to kill a demon. That means if a demon even gets a lick of her blood, they're probably dying right then and there. Obanai is one of the freakiest looking Hashira, but did you know that the author of Demon Slayer revealed that he's not very strong in terms of physical strength? But even crazier, Obanai's voice actor, Kenichi Suzumura, is actually married to another actor in the cast. He's married to Maya Sakamoto, who voices Tomeo, the doctor trying to figure out a cure for demons. But while the voice actor loves Tomeo, Obanai himself is crazy in love with one of the other Hashira. It's not Gyome, and it definitely isn't Sanemi. It's Mitsuri. And before falling in love with Mitsuri, Obanai used to have an extreme fear of women. This is actually something that happens in the real world, and it's called gynophobia. But he's scared of women because as a child, he was raised by a woman who sacrificed all his siblings and cousins to a demon for money and power. And he also began to hate women when he saw how weak the female demon slayers were. It's implied in the manga that Mitsuri is the first and only woman that Obanai has ever found beautiful. And the funny thing is that Obanai fell in love with Mitsuri at first sight. He was so dumbfounded at her beauty that his pet snake sensed it and bit him. Because of his abusive family, Obanai grew up to be a very small and weak young man. Even as a Hashira, he rarely ate. But once he saw Mitsuri's extreme appetite, he began to eat more and more. I personally think this helped him become an even stronger demon slayer. We've mentioned that Mitsuri has an insane appetite and that she teaches Shinobu how to cook food. If you can't guess by now, Mitsuri absolutely loves eating food. She eats more food than any other Hashira. In fact, the reason her hair is pink is because she eats too much Sakura Mochi, a pink rice cake. And believe it or not, this is a medical condition that can actually happen in real life. Mitsuri also holds the world record for eating 100 sticks of Japanese dumplings. But let's talk about what you guys are really wondering about. Why does she have an opening in her uniform? Sanemi keeps his uniform open because he's proud of his six-pack. Shinobu hated how immodest hers was, and Mitsuri also hated hers, but was simply too shy to ask for another one. Obanai noticed how much she disliked her uniform and gave her striped socks so she could cover up more. And it's probably worth mentioning that she loved Obanai back but was too shy to tell him. It's ironic that the love Hashira can't confess her love. But I bet you didn't know that she was Rengoku's student. She was originally trained as a disciple to Rengoku, but when she wasn't able to master flame breathing, she created her own variation called love breathing. And just like her breathing style is different, Mitsuri's weapons is very different from what a regular demon slayer usually carries. Instead of having a normal katana, she has a thinner version that can fold. She uses this weapon as a whip, and it's extremely effective. Mitsuri constantly asks Shinobu for love advice, but since they're both kind of naive, their conversations are always weird. Mitsuri once said that Shinobu tends to talk about heart rate, blood pressure, and the brain's response when it comes to love. It sounds more like a research thesis than a conversation about how to get a boyfriend. Did you know that Giyu has never ever smiled? He's a super quiet Hashira, and the other Hashira don't really like him that much. The only time that Giyu has smiled was when he saw his favorite plate of food, salmon with daikon. It doesn't really look that good, but I've never tried it, so I'm not sure. And did you know that Giyu's crow is so old that it tends to make mistakes when giving Giyu instructions? demons, this has caused Giyu to arrive late at important fights several times before. But Giyu constantly makes Zenitsu nervous because he might become Nezuko's future husband. You see, after an intense fight, Giyu's haori was torn to shreds. If you don't know, a haori is just a Japanese type of jacket. But after seeing how sad Giyu's was, Nezuko was able to restore most of the jacket using her sewing skills that she learned from her mother. Giyu was so shocked that he began to send Nezuko many different gifts, like kimonos, hair ornaments, and little snacks. Muichiro is one of the most powerful Hashira in existence, but he does use some tricks to give himself the advantage. One example of that is his loose clothing. He wears oversized clothing so that his enemies can't as easily predict his movements. But there's a secret behind Muichiro's strength, and it's actually pretty simple. He's able to fall asleep under any conditions. Even if he's sleeping outside and it's pouring rain, he's still able to fall asleep. By always getting the right amount of sleep, he's able to perform at peak strength every time he fights a demon. But something that'll shock you is that Muichiro is only 14 years old. He's the youngest of all the Hashira and became one of them in only 2 months. But if Muichiro is the youngest, who is the strongest? Well, that title goes to Gyome, the stone Hashira. And I don't think it'll surprise you that the weakest Hashira is Shinobu. Like I said earlier, that's why she uses poison rather than brute strength to defeat demons. And an Easter egg that hasn't been revealed in the show yet is that the words Destroyer of Demons are engraved in each of the Hashira's weapons. I'm not sure, but I think the words are enchanted to give the weapons more power. And since the Hashira are an elite group of demon slayers, they all earn a unique symbol on the back of their hand. This symbol correlates with the breathing style that they use. But if you look closely at the anime, it doesn't look like the animators have added in this detail yet. And while the katana is the standard weapon for a demon slayer, only 4 of the Hashira use katanas as their main weapon. Mitsuri uses that whip we talked about, Tengen uses 2 Nichirian blades, Shinobu's weapon looks like a normal katana, but it has a little slot in it for her poison. Obanai has a katana that is twisted just like his serpent breathing, and Gyome's weapon is an axe in a round ball with spikes called a flail. But the biggest question is, who is Tanjiro's future wife once Demon Slayer ends? Well, the last chapter of the manga answers this question, and I think you'll be surprised to hear it's someone you know. Tanjiro actually marries Keno, the girl he helped overcome her problem with making decisions.
When you think of people dying in Demon Slayer, Tanjiro's dad probably isn't who you think of, but he actually wins the award for the lamest death in the show, because he's the only important person who died from a cold. That's right, people like Rengoku die heroic deaths, and then Tanjiro's dad gets taken out by the sniffles. And now you're probably wondering, why is he on the list of important deaths? Well, think about it. If he hadn't died, he would have been home when Muzan arrived. Now, I'm not saying that Tanjiro's dad could have defeated Muzan, but we know he's strong because he's performed the Sun God dance for hours. And the manga even says that he has Yoriichi's strongest power, the transparent world. This power allowed Tanjiro's dad to see the world as if he was looking through an X-ray, letting him analyze the breath, blood flow, and muscle movements of his enemies. Tanjiro's dad could have used his power to predict Muzan's attacks. And while I'm not 100% sure, he might have been strong enough to keep Muzan away until the sun rose, forcing the Demon King to run away. While Tanjiro's dad died to a boring sickness, both Muzan and Kokushibo's deaths were downright gruesome. But first, let's talk about the way Tanjiro died. Obvious spoilers in this video. And I have to mention that Tanjiro's death is kind of a mystery. See, after he defeats Muzan, the very next chapter skips thousands of years into the future. Now, normally, we'd be stuck not knowing how Tanjiro dies, but if we flip through the manga, we can find some clues. First, we're told in the last chapter that Tanjiro married Kanao and had descendants. This tells us that he at least lived long enough to have a kid or two. Second, we know that he has this right here, and according to the Curse of the Demon Slayer mark, Tanjiro can't live past 25. Since he was 16 when the story ended, it's reasonable to assume that he died a peaceful death 9 years later, surrounded by his loving wife and a potential young child too. Now, that's kind of a boring death for a main character, but from boring, let's move on to interesting, because the way Yoriichi died is just savage. It was thousands of years before Tanjiro's birth. Yoriichi was growing old, nearly 85, and still annihilating demons wherever he went. One night, he ran into Kokushibo, the second strongest demon in the world, and without hesitating, Yoriichi slit Kokushibo's throat with a single slice. But before he could follow up with a second slice to Kokushibo's head and end the demon's life, Yoriichi died where he was standing. Later, even Kokushibo would admit that that if Yoriichi had swung at me a second time, I would have died. While he was aged and blind, his power was still in its prime. That's 3 of the 12 deaths checked, and next up, we have Gyomei's weird death. See, people with the Demon Slayer mark normally die at age 25, but things were different with Gyomei. He only unlocked the Demon Slayer mark when he was 27 years old, meaning that he was already over the age limit. So why didn't he die immediately? Well, it's simple really. The Demon Slayer mark causes you to die because it puts your body through extreme stress. If you get the Demon Slayer mark at a young age, you usually rack up so much damage that you die by age 25. Because of all this, it's pretty likely Gyomei would have lived for the next 5 to 10 years, but Kokushibo and Muzan had to ruin it. See, they were such tough opponents that Gyomei had to go all out with his Demon Slayer mark, and by the time the fight was over, Gyomei was fatally wounded and peacefully passed away. Now, peaceful is the last word I'd use to describe Kaigaku's death, because he was full of rage when his lifelong rival defeated him. See, Kaigaku and Zenitsu were trained by Jigoro, the ex-Thunder Hashira. He was such a strict master that they developed an extreme rivalry, each trying to become stronger than the other. This eventually drove Kaigaku away from the dojo, and while running away, Kaigaku was attacked by Kokushibo and turned into a demon. When Kaigaku's master learned about this, he committed seppuku in shame. This set Zenitsu on a path of revenge, and he vowed to kill Kaigaku, getting his chance when he encountered him during the final fight against Muzan. And at first, things were tough for Zenitsu. Kaigaku had combined his blood demon art with his thunder breathing, making him so strong that Muzan had already made him an upper moon. However, Zenitsu leveled things up by inventing a new form of thunder breathing just to defeat Kaigaku. Using this technique, he killed Kaigaku with ease. But here's the thing, Demon Slayer's author revealed that Zenitsu was only able to win because of a mistake. See, Kaigaku had just become a demon, so he hadn't fully mastered his blood demon abilities. If Kaigaku had waited to fight Zenitsu in a couple of months, he would have easily defeated Zenitsu. Now we gotta talk about the most explosive death in Demon Slayer. See, things were getting bad for the Demon Slayer Corps. More and more demons were popping up, and Kagaya, the leader of the Corps, knew he had to do something. So he decided to bait Muzan into visiting the Demon Slayer HQ, and when the Demon King arrived, Kagaya blew himself up trying to catch Muzan in the blast. Now the crazy part here is that Kagaya knew this wouldn't kill Muzan. He only blew himself up so that the Hashira could surprise attack Muzan. But Kagaya may have gone a little too far with this plan. I mean, he literally killed his wife and kids with the explosion. Now Kagaya isn't the only person who died while trying to kill Muzan. Tamayo did too, but the way she went out was just savage. See, before attacking Muzan, Tamayo spent years collecting blood samples to create a serum. With Shinobu's help, the serum would be able to significantly weaken Muzan, allowing the Demon Slayers to kill him. Once his poison was ready, Tamayo drank it and then attacked the Demon King. As she expected, he easily beat her and then absorbed her into his body. But there was something different this time. See, for some unexplained reason, her consciousness survived, and while Muzan was fighting the Hashira, Tamayo trash-talked the heck out of him, keeping him angry and allowing the Hashira to gain the upper hand. Now, her poison wasn't strong enough to kill Muzan, but it did weaken him. And before we explain how he died, let's talk about Kokushibo, the second strongest demon in the world. This guy was so powerful, it took the 4 strongest Hashira to take him down. But despite that, Kokushibo had the upper hand for nearly the entire fight. I mean, this dude cut off Muichido's hand, then pinned him to the wall with his own sword. And when Genya came in for a sneak attack, Kokushibo saw right through it and chopped Genya into a bunch of little pieces. This pissed Sanemi off. He charged at the upper moon, but things didn't go exactly as planned, and he got sliced open by Kokushibo. Luckily, Gyomei arrived just in time to save Sanemi, but even he, the strongest Hashira, wasn't strong enough to beat Kokushibo alone. Things only began to look better when Gyomei and Sanemi awakened their Slayer marks, and combined with Genya and Muichido overcoming their injuries, Kokushibo realized that he was beginning to lose. So he used his demon abilities to evolve and literally become a monster. Using this form, he mortally wounded both Genya and Muichido before getting ready to unleash some more carnage. But when he saw himself in the reflection of a blade, Kokushibo realized that his strength wasn't worth becoming a monster. Full of regret, he stopped fighting and let the Demon Slayers kill him. So that's how Kokushibo died. But what about the 2 people he killed on his way out? Muichido and Genya. His first victim, Muichido, was the youngest Hashira of all time. It's easy to forget, but Muichido is only 14. At At least he was, until he stabbed Kokushibo and got sliced in half. But he was such a Chad that he kept a hold of his sword, even turning it bright red in his final moments. Now Genya also got sliced in half by Kokushibo, but he had it much worse than Muichiro. See, one of the powers that he got from eating demons is the ability to survive bigger injuries. So after getting sliced in half, he felt way more pain than Muichiro. But soon, he lost too much blood and faded away, dying like a demon. Yeah, his death definitely wasn't as graceful as Mitsuri and Obanai's, cause these two fought and died side by side. You see, Mitsuri and Obanai were in love. And we learned why during the battle with Obanai's flashback. He grew up with a family of thieves who worshipped a serpent demon. These people were evil, even cutting up Obanai's mouth to make him look like the serpent demon. Obanai ended up killing the demon and escaping, but because of his appearance and family background, he was treated as a monster until he met Mitsuri, who treated him like a normal person. The two quickly became best friends and later became something more. During their fight with Muzan, it seemed like they would survive. I mean, Obanai literally turned his blade hot red, and Mitsuri ripped one of Muzan's arms off. However, things became deadly and they both took some serious injuries from Muzan. Obanai got scarred in both his eyes, and Mitsuri had chunks of her body ripped off. Obviously, no human could survive these injuries, so these two passed away shortly after Muzan was defeated. On the bright side, Mitsuri and Obanai died in each other's arms and reminisced about how they met. The two confessed their love for each other and vowed to get married in the next life. That's just romantic! But from heartwarming, let's go to horrifying, because the Demon King Muzan got killed in the creepiest way possible. It happened in chapter 199 with the sun rising over the Demon King. To prevent being burned up, Muzan used his strongest technique, becoming a big baby. Yeah, I'm also confused. Why did he do this? This form wasn't even effective, because he still burned up in the sunlight. But he made one last-ditch effort, taking over Tanjiro's body. Unfortunately, Muzan wasn't able to fully control Tanjiro's consciousness. As the Demon King wrestled for control, Tanjiro started thinking about his friends and family, and the influence they had on him allowed Tanjiro to resist Muzan's control. That's right, Tanjiro's power of friendship was stronger than the Demon King. Muzan was wiped out, and the battle ended there. Now, even though Tanjiro defeated Muzan, it was only because of his lucky victory against another Demon Moon. See, way back in chapter 146, Tanjiro and Gyu should have lost their fight against Akaza. Don't get me wrong, they had made huge improvements, but Akaza was still too strong for them. Like when they chopped off his head and he was still able to keep on going, something that normal demons can't do. Things were looking bad for the Demon Slayers until Akaza started remembering his human life. You see, Tanjiro subconsciously reminded Akaza of his human sensei, which led to Akaza remembering everything. Akaza thought back to meeting his mentor and getting married. His life was going great until his mentor and wife got poisoned by a rival dojo. When he heard about this, Akaza went on a rampage, killing everyone from the guilty dojo. That's when Muzan found Akaza and manipulated him into becoming a demon. Back to the present, Akaza thought of all his memories, showing remorse for everything he had done as a demon. With all these emotions flooding into his head, Akaza decided to use his strongest attack on himself. It was a noble ending for a noble warrior, and the only reason that Tanjiro and Gyu were able to survive that fight. But there's one more secret that I found in the manga, and it might be the craziest yet.